In our last video, we created some code that sort of works but doesn't really get us very far. If we start on the home page, we can click on the About Us page to transition to the About Us page, which is great, but the problem right now is no matter which button we click on, it's going to take us to the About Us page, because inside our code, instead of being dynamic with this, we've just hard-coded which movie clip we're animating off, which is the home movie clip, and which movie clip we're animating on. Down here in the on tween, we're animating on the about movie clip. So that doesn't really work very well, because if we click on the products button to run the on-click function, we want the on-click function to animate off whatever movie clip was already on, and to animate on the products button, not the about button or the about movie clip. So we need to change a few things here. Now, first of all, you'll notice that by default we're just creating the home variable, and then inside the onTween function down here, we're creating the about page variable and storing a new instance of the page about class inside that about variable. Well, instead of doing that, we're going to create all of our variables up here near the top. Okay, so we can copy this one or cut it, Control X, and we're going to create it up here. So we're creating these variables up here so that we won't have to worry about creating them inside all of these dynamic functions, because these dynamic functions are going to point to different movie clips depending on which button was clicked. So it's kind of hard to create a variable when you're not really sure what variable you're going to be creating when you run that function. So instead, we're just going to create all of our variables up here. So var contact for our contact page, so contact page contact equals new page contact. And then var products page products equals new page products. Okay, now in case you're getting a little bit lost, let me refresh your memory a little bit. Each of these movie clips, or each of these instances that we're creating a new page about, we're creating a new instance of page contact. These are, if you remember, these are the movie clips that we created in our library that are actually storing our content. So page products, if we go into our library, it's this page products movie clip here, which has all of the content for the products page. And so what we're doing is when we create all of these variables here, we're not actually putting them on the stage. We're just creating new instances of each of those movie clips and storing them in a variable. So later on, when it's time to put them on the stage, that's going to be very easy to do. Okay. So another thing we can do is another thing we need to do is we need to create another variable. And this variable is going to be called, or these variables are going to be called current page and next page. We need a current page to store whatever our current page is, because if we're on the home page, for example, and we click somewhere else, we need to animate off the home page. And in this on-click function where we're animating something off, right now we're just typing in the word home. Well, instead of typing in the word home, that's going to change depending on which page is currently being displayed. If we're on the contact page and we're trying to go somewhere else, we don't want the home page to animate off. We want the contact page to animate off. So we're going to create a variable that's going to keep track of whatever the current page is. So we'll just do that up here near the top. We'll create a new variable called current page, and this is going to store a movie clip. So we'll type movie clip, and by default the current page is going to be the home page. So we're going to type in home here. And actually we need to create this after we create these variables here that are storing, because right now we're pointing to home, but home hasn't been created yet. It's not created until down here. So let's take this, highlight it, Control X to cut it, and we'll paste it down here below where we created all of these instances of our pages. So var current page, it's going to be a movie clip, and we're going to store by default the home movie clip in it. So the home page is going to be our current page by default. We'll go to the next line, and we'll create a variable called next page, movie clip. And we'll explain a little bit more later why we need this next page variable. But for now, we'll just leave it at that. Now, we don't know what our next page is going to be because that's going to depend on which button we click on. So for now, we're not going to assign it a value. We're just going to say next page, movie clip, and then end your statement. And later on, whenever we click on one of these buttons, we'll assign a value to that. Now, this would all be a little bit easier to understand if we just made different functions for each of our clicks. However, if you create a different function for each click, then you're creating a lot of extra code that you don't need, and you're making your Swift file size a lot bigger than it needs to be. So it's really good to practice doing things this way. Okay, so we've created all of these variables that are basically storing new instances of each of our movie clip pages. The next thing we want to do here is we want to change all of our buttons here to movie clips. And the reason for that is if we're dealing with movie clips, we have a little bit more flexibility and we can do something with them that we wouldn't be able to do if they were buttons. And I'll show you that in just a second. But for now, let's just convert all of these buttons into movie clips. They're still going to function the same, but it will allow us to do something else. So let's unlock the buttons layer. And we can go into the library here and right-click on each of our buttons and go down to type and change it to movie clip. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll just right-click on each of the buttons and change them to movie clips. And we can see the icons for them are changing to movie clip icons. Type movie clip, button products, right-click, type movie clip. Okay, so they're all movie clips now. However, since we put them on the stage before we converted those, if we click on them, we can see in our timeline, or in our properties panel, that they're still buttons. And the way we can change that is just changing this drop-down menu from button to movie clip. And we can do it all at once by highlighting all of these and then going down to our properties and changing it from button to movie clip. So now we need to change the instance names here. So home, it's not going to be home BTN anymore. It's home underscore MC. Now you could leave it as home underscore BTN, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to do that. So we'll just change each of these instance names from underscore BTN to underscore MC. Okay, now since we've done that, we need to go back into our action script, and where we point to those buttons, we need to point to MC instead of BTN. So about underscore MC, contact underscore MC, and products underscore MC. So now we're pointing to the same buttons. They all function just fine. The only difference now is when we hover over these buttons, we're not going to get the hand cursor. So we need to create the code that's going to do that as well. So we'll go to the next line, skip a couple lines maybe. We'll go to home underscore MC dot button mode. That's button and then mode with a capital M, and we're just going to set that equal to true. That way when we hover over it, we'll get our pointer cursor. So we'll do that for about underscore MC dot button mode equals true. Oops, there we go. Contact underscore MC dot button mode equals true. And finally, products underscore MC dot button mode equals true. Okay, so now when we hover over those, let's go ahead and test our movie again. We still get our pointer cursor, our finger cursor, even though they're movie clips now. And if we click on one of these buttons, the animations are still working fine, even though we haven't really fixed the animations to point to the right pages yet. Okay, so what we can do now that we've converted these to movie clips instead of buttons is we can basically just kind of make up our own properties for these movie clips. Now you can't do that for buttons, so that's why we needed to change these to movie clips. And what we're going to do is we're going to store, for example, for our home movie clip, we need to know, or for our home, but it's a button, but it really is a movie clip, so I might use those two terms interchangeably. But for our home movie clip button, we need to tie that to this actual home movie clip, which contains our content for the home page. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a basically a property that we're going to make up for each of these buttons, and we're going to tie each of those buttons to the corresponding movie clip. And that's going to come in handy in our code in just a moment. So again, down here underneath the point where we created all of these variables, we're going to point to each of our movie clips, and remember these movie clips are the movie clips that are serving as our buttons, and let's create, or let's make up our own property here. Now if we type a dot here, then we get these code hints that show us all the properties of movie clips, but we're not going to use any of these. We're going to make up our own property. So let's make up our property called MC target, and we can set that equal to home, which is this variable that we created up here, which is storing our homepage content. So basically what we're doing here is we're simply using this MC target property that we made up. We're tying our home MC button to this home movie clip which contains our content. So we're going to do that for each of our movie clips. So about underscore MC, which is our about movie clip button, dot MC target equals about. Contact underscore MC dot MC target equals contact. And products underscore MC dot MC target equals products. Okay, and we'll explain a little bit in just a moment why we need all of that. But there we have it. Okay, so when we click, well, first of all, by default, the home page is going to animate on, and we have that going on right here. We've set the alpha to 0, the X and Y coordinates, and we've added that home movie clip to the stage, and by default, that home movie clip is going to animate on. Okay, so once that animates on, we have the option to click on one of our buttons, which is going to call this onClick function. Now right now, if we click on any of these buttons, we're going to go to onClick, and as we have it set up, we're going to animate off the home page, and then once that finishes animating, we're going to call on this motion finish event listener to jump over to the onTween function, and inside the onTween function, we're animating the about page on. Now, we're not always going to animate off the home page and animate on the about page, obviously. The page that we're going to animate off is going to be whatever the current page is. So that's what we created this current page variable for. So instead of animating off the home page, if we're on a different page, we need to animate off whatever the current page is. So we're going to point to this current page variable, which by default is storing the value of home. So we're going to animate off the current page, and when that current page has finished, we're going to animate on whatever the next page is. Well, if we jump down to this next function, this onTween function, we no longer have access to the current target of this event variable within the onClick function. In other words, if we click on the contact button, for example, the contact button is going to cause this onClick function to run, and we can access that contact button by typing e.currentTarget. And I'll show you what that looks like. e.currentTarget. The E is this event variable that we created here, and the current target is pointing to whatever object triggered this onClick function. So if we clicked on the contact button, then that's going to trigger the click event for the contact underscore MC. And in that instance, when we jump to the onClick function, this e.currentTarget is going to point to this contact underscore MC movie clip. So we can store that here, but once we get to this onTween function, we no longer have access to that. So that's why we created the next page variable. So now inside this onClick function, we can set next page equal to e.currentTarget. And then when we jump over to the onTween function, where we're going to animate the next movie clip on, that next movie clip is stored in this next page variable. Okay. Now let's take a look at what's going to happen here. Okay, so we click on, by default we're on the home page. Let's say we click on the about page. We click on the about page, so we jump to the onClick function, and we set the next page equal to e.currentTarget, and that's not really right, because e.currentTarget is going to point to this about underscore MC movie clip, which is the button at the top of our stage. We don't want the next page to be a button. We want the next page to be the page that's associated with that button. So instead of about_MC, we want to point to about_MC dot MC target, which is pointing to the actual about page. So instead of just e.current_target here, we need e.current_target dot MC target, which is that property that we made up here. So that's going to be set equal to about if the about button is the one that we just clicked on. Okay, so the next page, we're storing that, or we're storing the value of the about page into this next page variable. Okay, so we've updated the next page variable. We're animating off the current page, and then when that current page has animated off, we're going to call on the onTween function, and all of this is going to happen after that current page animates off. So the current page animates off. We come down here, and what we need to do is once that has animated off, we need to remove it from the stage. So right now we're removing the home page from the stage. Instead, we need to be removing the current page from the stage, which by default is home, but it's going to change as we go to different pages. So we're removing the current page from this stage, and then once we do that, we need to change the value of that current page variable because we're no longer on the home page anymore. We're now on the about page. So we're going to change that current page variable, and what do you think we're going to set it equal to? Well, we're going to set it equal to the next page that we stored up here. So this next page variable really just serves as kind of a transition point. So we're going to set current page equal to next page. And then later on, when we click on the next button, we'll change the value of the next page variable. So now, if we clicked on the about button, the value of current page after the home page animates off, the value of current page is going to be changed to about. So instead of about.alpha, we need to point to current page.alpha. We'll set that equal to 0. We'll set the value of the current page x coordinate to 20 and the y coordinate to 60, and then we're going to add that current page to the stage. So add current page, and then we're going to animate the current page on instead of about. Okay, so again, remember this current page is no longer pointing to the home page. Once we click on the about button, the home page is going to be animated off, and then once it's animated off, we're removing it from the stage and then changing the value of current page to whatever the next page was, whatever button we just clicked on. And then we're going to use that current page variable to set all of our alpha, x, and y coordinates, to add it to the stage and to animate it on. So now, adding just this code, we have now made all of our movie clip buttons functional. So let's hit Control Enter to test that. Our home page comes in by default. We click on About Us. The About Us page comes in. We click on Contact. About Us animates off. Contact animates on. And so now Contact is stored as the current page. So when we click on Products, the current page, which is Contact, is going to animate off. And the next page, which is Products, is going to animate on. So now we can click on these buttons in any order to get them to work. Now in the next video, we'll talk about one little problem that we have with this setup, but it's easily fixable. So let's close everything here. We'll save this as astransitions03.fla. So we'll save that, and we'll move on with the next video.